Hello and welcome today. Welcome to our program, Building Social Cycles in the Permaculture Landscapes. My name is Lisa Krause, and I will be co-facilitating today with Ehtan Guion, representing our peers in the newest graduating cohort from the intensive 7-week interactive online permaculture teacher training with Cascadia Permaculture. Today, we share our final project. We will be teaching short modules we developed that explore and apply aspects of the permaculture approach. This represents months of curriculum planning and collaboration across time zones as we develop our own styles of teaching the permaculture mindset and sharing its practices with others. Today, we will start with sharing our group knowledge, and then we'll move into our graduate cohort presentations. These will be 5-minute presentations followed by 1 minute of evaluation that we'll be conducting for ourselves. During that time, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions in the chat, and you will also be able to ask questions again in the closing time as our guests during the Q&A. After our first presentations, we'll move into a 5-minute break, followed by the second group of presentations. For our visitors today, thank you for coming. We are hoping that you see this opportunity to learn with us. And we're reminding you of Zoom etiquette, which is please keep your microphones muted. Remember, you can post your questions in the chat, and those questions are going to be responded to by our monitors and during the Q&A at the end.
Thank you, Lisa. And now you may be asking, what is the permaculture teacher training course? What have we done during the 7 interactive course? And this teacher training under the stewardship of Carol and Jude has given us a guide for a variety of teaching opportunities and unfolds like a map rubric. We have been given excellent guides to teaching permaculture, lessons and activities, and being able to use those building tips to create modules, lesson plans, and understanding permaculture is about learning to listen, to observe, to respond, and to design with the humility for the communities that we're in, the landscapes that we get to live in and respond to as we live in them as well. This course, as we took it together, strengthened our ability to think in such patterns, to understand those patterns as we observe them and respond to them, to teach from different living systems and teach about them, how to do so with informative capacity and the most positive permaculture capacity that can be brought to the table as teachers. And as we hold that space for many kind of learners, understanding the diverse learning capacities, the types of learners that we have, and the types of landscapes has been important as we expand our experience with multiple different perspectives in this group. These are some examples from our teacher training where we were able to go over presenting modules, what methods we would use from role-playing, music, to storytelling, and how to create curriculum plans that are filled with essential info, meet the objective standards that we set, and keep the track that we are trying to teach in the permaculture courses that we are planning. And then what to consider when designing the interactive activities themselves, what kind of agreements we are setting, what the size of the group is for every activity, and where it may be planned. These are some of the things we worked on together in different online modules every single week as interactive activities together. And in our own words, permaculture itself is defined in these 2 ways that are very similar in their overall diction definition. The first group understood permaculture and defined it as a design methodology guided by ethics and principles that are based on worldwide indigenous knowledge to create whole closed-loop systems working with natural rhythms rather than against them. And the second group defined permaculture as permanent regenerative systems, combining indigenous wisdom and Western sciences that mimic the cycles in ecology and the systems that are living within them, that are being built.
So as we mentioned before, permaculture is a design system that's guided by a set of ethics and principles. In the center of this graphic are the ethics that define the core. There's earth care, people care, and fair share. Surrounding that are 12 principles that guide our design decisions and are things that you're going to hear us refer to throughout our presentations today. Just wanted to make you aware that these things are out there and just to keep your ears open for the way that those principles and ethics are put into action. This next graphic is the functional systems of permaculture and how we define regenerative whole systems design. Each of these fields, different colors, are aspects of the interconnectivity of the permaculture design systems. We look from design in a very literal sense into thinking about community systems, economics, the built environment and the appropriate technology that fuels it. Then we move into the natural systems, forest ecosystems, plants and animals, the health of the soil, and care of the water. All of these areas in the fields of permaculture are where we derive the topics for our presentations today.
In today's presentations, we'll start with Group 1, Cycling Life in the Permaculture Landscape, responding to soil test results through a permaculture lens, animals in the urban permaculture, and aquaculture. Group 2 will then do sustainable systems from soil to sociocracy, micro to macro transition of energy, designing 7-layer food forests, and communes, co-housing, and eco-villages. And I will be introducing Lisa Krause from Kalkaska, Michigan. She is an herbalist and permaculture consultant for home and farm scale clients from her northeastern Michigan homestead, a permaculture folk school and regenerative agroforestry demonstration site. Her educational program offerings grow out of 12 years of service offering design, build, and maintenance, specializing in urban and rural stormwater interventions, edible landscapes, and native habitats. As her business, she founded Roots and Sky LLC. And I will let you take it away, Lisa, with responding to soil test results through the permaculture lens. And again, for anyone with questions during this, please place them into the chat so they can be answered by our co-facilitators and be assisted while you are watching.
Okay. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to be talking about building soil, responding to soil test results through a permaculture lens. Our learning objectives today are to understand what a soil test measures and some of the issues that arise from conventional recommendations. We will be applying permaculture ethics and principles throughout the process of understanding the importance of feeding the soil and not the plant, and identifying natural sources of nutrients on site and soil building techniques. Soil testing is considered the foundation of site planning. This is an example of the permaculture principle, observe and interact. We gather information about the soil condition, and if we're working with a soil lab, when we send our results, we will get our results back, we will get recommendations from the lab on areas of nutrient deficiency. When we sent our soil tests out from our new farm, I had a feeling that we would be below optimum in many key nutrients. Our soil is very sandy and known to leach nutrients and water, and it's also very low in organic matter. The lab recommended that we use synthetic manufactured fertilizers and gave us the option of organic pelletized fertilizer. The problem with that is that synthetic fertilizers are ongoing inputs that do nothing to restore soil life. There are also synthetic fertilizers that are easy to overuse and end up polluting our waterways. Plus, global mining for minerals is unsustainable. So we'll look at the permaculture principles on the left-hand column, and then we will derive the recommendations based on that. So when we think about small and slow solutions, we know that we should encourage and feed the soil microbiome. Using and valuing biological and renewable resources leads us to know that adding soil amendments will be the right answer for increasing nutrients. Producing no waste tells us to source our materials on site or locally. Functions that are supported by multiple elements, you're going to want to create backups for your compost sources. Observe and interact. Test your soils annually just to evaluate how your interventions are working. And applying self-regulation and feedback, you're going to want to tailor your reaction to those soil tests and change your practices based on that. So on our site, we're going to be improving our compost through adding additional organic matter from leaf mold and pond muck. We have a pond on site and you can dredge some of that material that's very good for holding water capacity and full of a lot of decaying organic matter. On-site sources of nitrogen include aged cow manure. We can start with cover crops as green manure and also coffee grounds. On-site sources of phosphorus include aged chicken manure, worm castings, and also fish scraps from processing fish or leftovers from meals that can be buried in the garden. Sources of potassium include wood ash from our wood stove or our campfires, as long as you're using natural untreated wood. We can use straw and grass clippings as well as potassium-rich cover crops. We also intend to implement some no-till permaculture designs for building the soil and feeding the soil microbiome. Hugelkultur includes decaying or like logs and woody debris covered in compost and topsoil, creating a raised bed. Lasagna technique are alternating layers of carbon and nitrogen to form a raised bed, or mandala style gardening, which is a type of lasagna gardening where you actually the curved design helps to form a windbreak and prevent erosion and retain water. So the takeaways from this presentation are to apply permaculture ethics and principles in responding to soil tests. You're going to want to build your healthy soil through feeding the soil microbiome and prioritize natural local sources of materials to improve your compost quality. Continue to conduct annual soil tests to evaluate the impact of your interactions. So remember that feeding the soil, not the plant, is a small and slow solution that actually builds healthy soil. Here are my references today, the Building Soil book and also the Organic Farmer Training Manual, and this is my contact info. Thank you again. My name is Lisa Krause. Please reach out for more information.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was a wonderful presentation. And you can see her info here presented, her website, her Instagram handle, and feel free to take this minute to go over a response, any questions, anything that you noted, any feedback that you would like to give Lisa on her presentation, or what you noted in soil testing that you would like to know more about as well.
We'll be taking this minute to do our own personal evaluations, and then we'll be back with our next presentation. Thank you. Moving
And thank
into,
you.
I'm sorry, moving into our next presentation, I'm introducing here Beth Vild, who will be presenting Animals in Urban Permaculture Systems. Beth hails from Akron, Ohio, where she's an urban social permaculturist who balances her time between mom, food forestry, and community organizing. In finding the overlapping circles of environmental justice and stewardship, Beth has created both an environmental justice nonprofit, Big Love Network, and an urban permaculture landscaping business, Wild Woman Design and Consulting. Beth got her PDC in 2016 and advanced PDC training in urban issues in 2018. Please contact her at her organizational email and website, biglovenetwork.us.
Hi, my name is Beth Vild, and I'm here to present on the topic of animals in an urban permaculture setting. We're going to talk a bit about kind of the bigger picture, the larger dream, and then realizing small, slow steps to make that dream a reality. We'll be talking about rotational grazing, pest management, wildlife, and local laws. So this is the dream. This is my urban permaculture homesteading dream of wanting a house with a small side lot, in which I can do things like have pygmy goats that I can use for their manure, their milk, and for helping to clear brambled vacant lots throughout the city. Then I would also introduce chickens that would help to eat the larvae from the goat manure and scratch and spread manure around, as well as provide eggs. Ducks are also great for manure and eggs, but one of the great things about them is that they won't eat your plants. They will instead just eat your slug, larvae, and aphids in a system. And it's always great to add a gosling to your fowl system as an alarm system for predators. Cats and dogs are also great protection from predators, as well as good pest management for urban pests such as mice and rats. And then obviously looking for pollination, habitat, and for increasing worms for our soil health. And this, again, is the really big picture. But at some point, we have to come to reality. And so, as the Big Love Network, we were working on doing food forestry and urban city parks across the city. And we spent years doing soil buildup and building these parks. And because we also do social permaculture, we were working heavily on police brutality, and because of that, they ripped out all of our food forests. So one of the important things as a urban permaculturist to learn was to really break up this into different parcels of land that our organization actually owns. So we start with the permaculture zones of the home and our home base of our office that my daughter and I live above in the apartment of. And then we extend out into having more crops and production space at our urban farm, where you can see my business partner, Anika. Shout out to Anika, who's here on the left here, which is just a neighborhood away that she helps steward as she lives right there. And then we're working on kind of creating more grazing areas and areas in which we can have food forestry and native forestry on vacant lots. And our first one is going to be in East Akron, and that's that plot in the middle there. So one of the big picture things that, we always dream at when we talk about animals in a permaculture system is rotational grazing. And it looks very different in a rural system than it does in an urban system. In a rural system, it can be really fast paced. It can go from having large animals like cows to a fowl system that can eat the cow larvae from their manure and scratch and move that around the soil, to pigs that can wallow and really dig up the soil. That's ripe for planting. Well, in an urban system, that has to go to being almost more seasonally, and you also have to find supplemental nutrients for your animals in that system. And again, I realized, oh my goodness, I'm thinking about this in this large way, but really what we need is slow and small solutions. And one of the best way is to have a very good floofy void boy, like my dear cat here, who's a great mouser, who takes care of the mouse on our property. Also thinking about how urban wildlife can help do pest management and creating habitat for that urban wildlife. And that also thinking about the soil, the microbiome of the soil and increasing that. For example, I'll be learning or adding a vermiculture composting system to the bottom of my sink to increase our nutrients for our soil and the projects that we have. But I'm doing all these small solutions while I also stack the functions of fighting for local policy and advocacy within our area to change our laws. Right now, we can have chickens, but you're not allowed to have chickens within 150-foot range of any structure, and their chicken coop can be considered a structure. So when the city is using our permaculture methodologies as a way to tear out our systems whenever they get mad at us, this is a faulty policy. And so we're working with people across our area to fight that policy within a 5-year plan. And hopefully we'll be able to stack solutions of
Thank
having
you for sharing, Beth. We really appreciate your time and making sure that we move on to the next presentation.
Our next presentation is Aquaculture as Applied to Permaculture from Drake James. Drake hails from Milwaukee, Oregon. She's the founder.
We just need 1 minute.
Oh, geez, I'm so sorry.
All doing great.
Ethan, can you move back one slide so we can do our 1 minute of evaluations for Beth?
Thank you. And we will be moving on to the next presentation with Drake James. If you could introduce Drake, Lisa.
Right, thank you. So we're going to be moving into aquaculture as applied to permaculture with Drake James. Drake is from Milwaukee, Oregon, and the founder of Urban Village Designs, LLC, a permaculture design stewardship and education and organizational resilience practice rooted in living systems thinking. Additionally, she supports her regenerative work through tending her 3/4-acre educational homestead and local 2-acre food forest. Drake can be reached at Urban Village Designs on Instagram, Urban Villager on Substack, and through her business website.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Give me just a moment as I pull up my presentation here. Great. So today I'm going to be talking about aquaculture as it's applied to permaculture. Today, we're going to be covering why we need it, an overview of aquaculture and permaculture, the benefits of aquaculture, the types of aquaculture, and aquaponics as an entry to understanding it. So why do we need aquaculture? In today's conventional fish harvesting that we see, there's an issue with overfishing, so that is collapsing ecosystems, as well as the way that fish and other seafood is harvested. We see both environmental damage and pollution happening. And then through that as well, a lot of the fish and the seafood that we get from our oceans and rivers are coming out with chemicals and high levels of metals. And so it's important for us to begin thinking about how do we create opportunities for cleaner access to these types of food sources. Conventional fish farming also has high energy inputs and maintenance needs, which is not particularly useful for a sustainable future. So aquaculture sorry, let me go back. Wow. Okay, so aquaculture and permaculture, it's the sustainable cultivation of water ecosystems and food webs that enhance the interdependent relationship between all aquatic organisms while obtaining high yields of edible plant and protein such as fish, crustaceans, and water birds. In an aquaculture system, we're using a whole systems design so that we're integrating plant and animals in order to provide a mutually beneficial relationship. So in these systems, we're using and valuing diversity through making sure that we're using these diverse guys to help each other to cycle their nutrients. When the fish poop in the water, it actually gets sucked up by the root systems of the plants, which then filter the poo and then create a cleaner water for your different animals that are in there. So in this process, we're producing no waste through that waste nutrient cycling. We're obtaining a yield because as those plants take the fertilizer out of the water, we're actually able to grow really healthy food. And we're also creatively using and responding to change by seeing this need for healthier fish production, seafood production, and food production through being able to actually implement this into ecosystem repair. So there's a variety of different types of aquaculture systems that we can implement to meet this need. The types are in a freshwater system, we have aquaponics, which can be indoors or outdoors. And then we can also apply it to ponds, lakes, and rivers. And then in a marine setting, it can also be implemented in a coastal setting, such as oyster harvesting or offshore and fish production. My entry into aquaponics or into aquaculture was through aquaponics. This is actually a setup I had in my bedroom 13 years ago. It was not very successful, so I actually embellished it a little bit. There were fish in there, but you can't see them, so I added those. And in a setup like this, you're taking your fish waste from the bottom, you're cycling it through the top, and in the top area there, you have a plant medium such as leca or hygiton, or also known as expanded clay balls. And they produce the perfect environment for beneficial bacteria to develop that benefit those plant roots. Again, those plant roots are filtering the water that goes back into the aquarium, and it creates a beautiful closed loop system. So in aquaponics, we're seeing the nutrient waste cycle happening. There's plant and fish cultivation. And this setup, again, we're not actually cultivating fish for eating, but they are pets. And it's a great teaching tool. You can have these in classrooms, or you can have bigger scale for teaching other people in like a greenhouse or industrial sized ecosystem. So they're super scalable, and depending on what your needs are, whether it's education or actually producing mass quantities of food, it's a really awesome opportunity to implement aquaponics. So what I used from the get-go was the Complete Idiot's Guide to Aquaponic Gardening. This is what we covered today, and this is how you can reach me if you want to learn more, and here are some resources that I used to put this together today. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Drake. We're going to be taking our 1 minute of evaluation now, and we'll pull Drake's slide back up so you have her contact information and you can look her up and contact her for more details.
And there is a question in the chat, Drake, if you have time to answer.
And we will now be transitioning into a short break of about 5 minutes. Please take that time to use the restroom, take care of your biofunctions, take some time for stretching before we return back to Group 2 with Sustainable Systems from Soil to Sociocracy.
Carries me away with you. Busted fences down the dirt road, leading to a place we know. Sometimes I find it hard to tell, but you give me peace of mind. It's been a while since I felt your hands in mine. Every song that I love singing, by the house that I call home. I didn't know that I was missing. Now I know. Oh. Feels like a moment lost in time. You know it's not the way it seems, and never right. Hope you're doing good. I'm sure you have moved on to someone better, but I wrote you a song. So come and see the show. Oh, it's the last one that I'm doing. Oh, so come and say hello. Oh, tell me all about it. Oh, hope you're doing well. I'm sure you're better now. A little and I stop spinning around. So come and see the show. Oh, it's the last one that I'm doing for. So come and say hello. Oh, tell me all about it.
We have 1 minute left of break here. We'll be back with you shortly. Hey, welcome back. We are now entering into the second half of our program today. This is the Sustainable Systems from Soil to Sociocracy, where we'll be learning about micro and macro transition of energy, designing 7-layer food forests, and our final presentation, communes, co-housing, eco-villages, oh my, basics of intentional communities. After that, we'll have a little closing and a Q&A session. Remind you that you can always ask questions throughout in the chat. Our first presentation now will be Micro to Macro Transition of Energy with Ehtan Guion from Austin, Texas, where he is a regenerative soil specialist and founder of One Man with a Few Gardens. He designs Texas native permaculture landscapes using mineral balancing, soil food web analysis, biochar inoculation, bokashi composting, cover crop systems, and waterwise rain harvesting strategies. As head soil specialist for Revel Greens, he integrates hydroponic biology and microgreen nutrient density research. His work connects electroculture experimentation, living soil education, and ecosystem restoration to strengthen community food systems. You can find him at One Man with a Few Gardens on Instagram and Facebook. And here you are, Ehtan.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And I will be going today through the micro lens and what that looks like for the living soil food web. From micro to macro, what that transition of energy entails. And what is the living soil food web, you may be asking? And that's where the Dr. Elaine Ingham's Soil Food Web School is the place I was able to learn and understand who makes up this food web from the microscopic view. Once we see under this lens, we cannot see the world any other way. And understanding the functions of these energies in the system, how they cycle and the flow under this lens is what Elaine has taught me. And that's where there's two different lenses, the high multiplication and low multiplication, from macro to micro, even in this layer. And when we begin to study regenerative systems, we quickly realize that life organizes itself into layers, and we keep building up under different lenses. Whether we are looking at soil biology, plant health, and human nutrition, or ecological landscapes, we see the same pattern repeated again and again. This is an example of the soil food web and how energy is transitioned, how it's broken down, and where it cycles into. As you can see, the sun on the left-hand side is where the energy comes in. Plants convert that sunlight into carbohydrates and release a portion of this carbon into the soil as exudates. That means sugars, amino acids, organic acids, and carbon is one of the key building blocks of life. And you can see from this image, we have the organic matter that is then produced being eaten by nematodes, fungi, and bacteria in the second trophic layer, the third having our predators, arthropods, nematodes, and protozoas, and moving up there into higher predators who are releasing nutrition back into the environment. This is a great example of what's broken down into the soil food web specifically and under the microscope, who we're looking at, their functions, and where that energy transition goes along each trophic layer, from the root exudates, leaf litter, all the way to bacteria, fungi, and algae, them being the primary decomposers, consuming the organic matter and storing it for our predators who will then eat it and release it back to the environment. This is another excellent image that shows that diverse connection. And as we move from the fourth and fifth trophic layer, we start seeing engineers, we start seeing architects, making the nutrition around them into homes, into layered systems that then will inhabit smaller ecosystems, from the organic carbon to different biomasses in our microscopic view, all the way to food to predators. And that's where it is a food chain, the transition of energy, understanding that transition, where these simple keys are then introduced and how they build up these layers is important for each food chain and the food web. As we continue moving from micro to macro, we will understand more and more of these complex and diverse systems and what makes them up, leading to a healthy pyramid of nutritional transmutation. The microbial biomasses are released back into the environment in such a way that we typically contain about 10% of the energy in this transfer. There's going to be a decrease in each trophic layer, moving from your plants, microscopics, to your arthropods, and all the way up in your food web, you start seeing energy going down 10% each and every time. This can be understood and managed, and we can understand ecosystems by that transition of energy, who the key players are, and why they are there, so we can improve the percentages that are being directed from light energy all the way to the predators like us. And you can see here, this is a great example of how you can start turning it into a mathematical equation, understanding how decomposers are improving those natural percentages and what percentages you're getting back each year out of the permaculture designs that improve plant health, that work with our plant health to improve our larger ecosystems to the food pyramid that we ourselves are relying on. And this is a wonderful image of Elaine. I recommend checking out her work and all the references that I have with the Living Soil Food Web School, USDA, as well as John Kemp's group and Advancing EcoAg as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ethan. And we are going to be doing that 1 minute transition, the 1 minute reflection time for us with evaluations. You don't want to see that actually. Okay.
And
No.
for our next presenter today, we will have Cierra Arterberry from Los Angeles, California. And she is a passionate coach and educator with a decade of experience working with children. She is currently serving as an AmeriCorps Literacy Intervention Specialist with Reading Partners in Los Angeles, and she aims to inspire a love for nature through her own children's nonprofit, No Score Kept, while advancing her permaculture journey. We are excited for the future, and today she will be sharing designing the 7-layer food forest systems. And please reach out to her email if you have any personal questions or would like her consultation.
Cierra, we're not hearing your presentation.
You could restart with sound.
And the benefits. Hello everyone, my name is Cierra Arterberry, and today I will be speaking on the topic of food forests, the 7 layers that go into one, and the benefits of a food forest. To change the community, you have to change the composition of the soil. We are the soil. A food forest is an edible garden that mimics a forest ecosystem. It is a self-sustaining ecosystem that can provide food for humans. There are many different scales on which one can be created. There can be a fruit tree guild, a backyard food forest, even a community food forest. Not only can food forests help provide food, medicine, mulch, attract beneficial insects, but it also allows us to decrease our reliance on corporations and outside inputs and instead provide mutual aid and help with the food security issues within our communities. We're able to integrate rather than segregate. And with patience and dedication, there are a lot of rewards. But before we can get to those rewards, we have to put in the work. Think of the first 3 years as the soil building phase, not the production phase. Think small and slow solutions. Phase 1. This is going to be our canopy and sub-canopy layer. Now before you put anything in the ground, you're going to want to make sure that you're choosing plants for your climate. You want to check the hardiness zone, the chill hours, soil type, rainfall, and the microclimate. Those are all going to help determine what will actually thrive. A few examples of some canopy trees that are going to do well in the type of Mediterranean climate that I'm currently in are going to be mulberries, chestnuts, walnuts, just to name a few. Next, we have our understory or sub-canopy layer, which ideally will be dwarf fruit trees that can take a little shade so that you can tuck them in between the canopy trees. Again, think small and slow solutions. The first 3 to 5 years, your canopy trees are going to be pretty small. Your food forest isn't going to look anything like these lush trees in this example or in any of the permaculture books you might see. Fig trees, lemon, lime, orange, pomegranate, those are definitely some sub-canopy trees that would do well in my current climate. And if you're planning on planting more than one or quite a few, just make sure that you're allowing sufficient space for their maturity. Now on to phase 2. This is going to be our shrub layer and our herbaceous layer. You're going to want to make sure that you're filling gaps between the trees with shrubs, like blueberries for instance, maybe some elderberries, some rosemary. The shrub layer can produce a lot of food for you. You can tuck a shrub layer in almost anywhere, and there are a ton of varieties to choose from. Now when it comes to the herbaceous layer, this typically can consist of a lot of perennial plants, so plants that live for a season, but seed vigorously and tend to self-propagate. You're going to want to observe and interact and do your best to grow annuals and sun-loving perennials in the spaces that will eventually be shaded. A few examples: lemon balm, goldenrod, asparagus. Phase 3 is going to be our ground cover and our root layer. Our root layer is crucial for both food production and enhancing soil life and structure. Another name for this layer is the rhizosphere. Ginger, garlic, beets, taro, potatoes. When it comes to our ground cover layer, an example of using edges and valuing the marginal would be planting strawberries, herbs, or sun-loving berries along the sunny border. The ground cover layer acts as a living mulch, suppressing weeds, retaining soil moisture, and preventing erosion. Lastly, we have our vertical layer, grapes, cucumbers, tomatoes, etc. This is going to help maximize space, improve air circulation, and increase our yields. And there we have it, folks. That is going to be the completion of our 7-layer food forest today. Remember, small and slow solutions. To change the community, you have to change the composition of the soil. And you are the soil. Whether you decide to create a food forest in your backyard or in your local community, I hope you walk away from this feeling more informed and excited. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cierra. That was a wonderful presentation. And we will take a minute now to reflect and evaluate. Excellent. Thank you again for your patience as we evaluate each other's work. And we will be moving on to Rebecca Cates in Maryville, Indiana. Provides educational programming and technical assistance around beginning farmers, permaculture, youth natural resources, and gardening. She also coordinates the Great Lake County Purdue Master Gardeners. She works part-time for the Northwest Indiana Food Council, where she coordinates the first Indiana Department of Labor Farmer Apprenticeship Program. Rebecca completed her PDC, Permaculture Design course in 2023. She is a mom of 2 young kiddos, Kylie and Emmett. She has a small homestead, loves spending time in nature with community, and she loves organizing ecstatic dance meetups and participates in a local time bank. Take it away, Rebecca.
Thanks, Ethan. If I can get to the right screen. Go. Okay. So we're going to cover intentional communities. How do they work? What are some real life examples? Self-selecting is intentional community for you. How can you learn more? And we're going to do it in the context of permaculture principles. I did want to share some photo examples from a real world eco village near us that my friend Valerie, who's actually on this call, introduced me to, Sage Valley and near Bloomington, Indiana. So this is my husband and our friend sitting in a family circle, lots of circling, lots of people time in an eco village. So what are intentional communities? When I first heard the word commune, I was like, oh no, that sounds like a cult. But actually, it's an example of an intentional community organized around shared goals, sharing, and being together. Eco villages are what we're leaning into today. They're an intentional community type organized around ecology and sustainability, and something that our local community is working on organizing ourselves. You can have intentional community in an urban area as well. That might look like co-housing or shared housing, whether you live in an apartment, condos, or live off the land with mini homes, an eco village, or all different kinds of intentional communities can fit your lifestyle. So how intentional communities work in the context of eco villages, you definitely have a lot of ecological consciousness. So design, working with the land, living regeneratively with renewable energy. So whether that be, composting toilets, solar panel, bike power, lights, or bike power, people power, different kinds of energy and systems in place, using permaculture, why we're all here today, in your design to work with the land and live sustainably. We can see permaculture principles in these systems, observing, working with the land slowly, working with our people slowly and intentionally, catching and storing energy, trying to be in that closed loop system, using and valuing renewable resources, and producing no waste, keeping everything on the land. I also have to credit this thought line to one of my colleagues on the call, Drake, who presented earlier. She did her master's thesis on eco-villages. So thinking about the people part of the community is even more important than the land. So with intentional community, we're looking at the whole person, spirituality, emotionally, just how we work together, collective decision making. My colleague, my friend Kathy, introduced me to sociocracy. It could be nonviolent communication, like we have a local expert, Mary May, lots of conflict management, lots of self-reflection, being able to accept feedback. Everybody is an asset, whether you are an accountant or a farmer, a gardener, someone who loves kids, who teaches, organizes events, all sorts of things I'm not mentioning. Take a moment, all of you here today, type in the chat, what is an asset that you bring to your community? Think of this as a job description. Should you live in an eco-village or an intentional community, have a high emotional intelligence, thinking of the community as a baby, and you are the adult coming in to share taking care of this child. You're not coming in and saying, I have nothing, help me. Everybody has something that you can contribute to your intentional community. So coming in with that mindset is important. Checking your egos at the door, having a lot of self-awareness, and really being able to see that you're in it for the long haul. So you're not going to retire somewhere fancy after living in an eco-village. You're not building equity necessarily in the eco-village. This is your long-term plan. And play. Play is important. So here's a picture of some adults playing and learning together. You might have some common goals. You definitely will have some common goals when searching to see if an existing intentional community is for you. And while building your intentional community, you might have commonalities related to faith or spirituality, your dietary or other philosophical or political ideations, whether you want to homeschool or unschool, whether you have shared income models, which could be scary, but apparently some of the most successful intentional communities have shared income models. And how you want to make decisions as well. If you think intentional community living might be for you, first, I highly recommend visiting an existing one. You can find foundations for intentional communities online. I'll share that resource, and they have a map where you can find different examples of intentional communities all over, whether you live in a city or the country. And sometimes you can find online virtual tours as well. Take a moment, type in the chat, have you visited an eco-village or other intentional community? Which one? We want to know. Here's some different resources to learn more. I highly recommend the Inside Community podcast, which my friend Heather, who is part of our local time bank, introduced me to. And there's some great books as well. In conclusion, I hope you all know a bit more about intentional communities. Here's my references and ways to reach me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. That was a wonderful presentation, and we'll take 1 minute for reflection.
Thanks for participating in my questions, guys. I love you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for taking that time for reflection. And if you do want to reach out, of course, to Rebecca, here's her info posted below. and she can happily teach and provide wonderful webinars like many of our other teachers here that you have heard from today. And that's where we want to go over what did we learn today? What was the objective of being here and learning about permaculture? We began today starting this whole entire process learning about these systems, the soil, the water, the animals, the forests, the governance of interpretation, of understanding and observing, and what crucial parts we play as key players ourselves in the permaculture design. But at the center of it all again, you've heard over and over in the layering process, earth care, people care, and fair share are the most important things we can root ourselves in and create ethics around. And as teachers, we made sure to focus on those principles, making sure that the ethics are held utmost in each principle that we are able to teach and carry forward. And that way we can show that there is so much more beyond just knowing about permaculture, but actually involving ourselves in that aspect of how we play a function in these cycles and systems. And what you heard today fits inside above those three principles that group one showed through how life cycles through regenerating through soil, animals, and water, how it's balanced and maintained. Group two expanded that thinking outward into the transmutation of energy in those systems, food forests and their designs, and community designs that are upholding integrity in the regenerative aspect. What connects these presentations today is that permaculture is the ability to include a collection of techniques while building a decision-making framework rooted in deeper relationships, either rooted into the soil, into the interpersonal or personal relationships in our permaculture groups and communities. And we are not just designing parts or working ourselves as gears in this system. We are designing future relationships that can be upheld, that can be integrated and grown through positive influence in the permaculture practices. And that's where today I want to express, and for my cohorts as well, the gratitude to Jude Hobbs with Cascadia Permaculture and their team, Carol Burton and Urban Harvest, and Carly Thomaset, as well as Pina. All the foundations that you have heard about today, the 3 ethics, 12 principles, every single piece of this class has been an honor to be taught through Jude, Carol, and Carly with guidance in how to make the next step as teachers, how we can be the best teachers possible, how we can have a better foundation of integrated relationships with cohorts that took their vulnerability to be a part of the 7-week course and to really take the time to become the best teachers that we can potentially be. So thank you, Jude, Carol, and Carly for this opportunity to become permaculture teachers in training certified in this process. And it is learning again how to observe, to respond, and to listen. Think in patterns, teach from systems, hold space for multiple different varieties of learning while applying feedback as growth. And that is a reflection of the 12 principles that I will conclude with today saying this. From soil microbes to aquaculture systems to food forests to eco-villages, we are designing cycles, cycles of nutrition, cycles of energy, cycles of learning, cycles of governance in positive permaculture practices. Today was about building social cycles in permaculture landscapes, and the most important cycle being this one: observe, design, implement, evaluate, and adapt. This course pushed our boundaries and made sure that we could understand what that means in that design process. These cycles will continue past the Zoom room as we continue teaching. Thank you for being a part of today, and thank you, Rebecca, Lisa, Drake, Beth and Cierra for being vulnerable in this process of becoming teachers.